What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the first episode of the Get Wealth podcast. Got a really exciting first episode for you. It's with my mentor and business partner and friend, Alan Woodruff. Can't say enough about him. He's got over 40 years experience investing in real estate. He owns over 60 rental properties. He's seen it all. He's done almost every type of deal. And in this episode, you're going to walk away with direct knowledge on how to buy your first rental property. He talks about creative finance investing. So buying a property without having to have a whole bunch of money to put into a deal, how you can literally put $0 into a deal and make a win-win for both people using creative financing. You're going to want to stick around for that. He talks about using a self-directed IRA, which is essentially how you have your traditional Roth IRA. You can also have a Roth IRA to buy real estate with. So that's a powerful tool that I didn't know existed until I met Alan. So enjoy the video, and thanks for stopping by. Please, if you're watching this, like and subscribe, leave a comment. And if you want to join the school community where you have direct access to the people that come on the podcast, the link will be in the description. Sign up. It's free for the first 100 members. There's going to be millionaire coffee hours every single week, direct access to the people that come on the show for a live Q&A. There's going to be business strategies, chat rooms, like-minded people inside. Would love to have you in there. Thanks for watching. Enjoy. Alan Woodruff, thanks for coming on the show. How did you get started investing in real estate?
How did I get started? Well, I got motivated to leave graduate school due to the war in Vietnam. So I got a job working for the Department of Defense, and I was there at our Navy R&D lab, and I was overhearing a conversation, and I said, "Hey, what are you guys talking about?" And they said, "Well, we buy apartment houses." And I was like, here I was 24 years old, fresh out of school. And I was like, wow, how do you do that? And my boss said, "Oh, just read this book by Wayne Nickerson, How I Turned 1,000 into a Million in Real Estate in My Spare Time." So that was the sum total of my coaching for the next probably 25 or 30 years or something like that. I went and got that book. I read it. It took all of probably 2 hours to read. And I went and bought my first duplex, and it was very straightforward. And that was one lesson I learned, which was just take one step at a time. You don't have to go do something. I mean, I see some of these ads for get these 25 DVDs and all this kind of nonsense, which is really stupid because it's just going to confuse you. Instead of just take one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, as they say. When you get to the next need, well, then you solve that. You just keep going. So that's all there was to it.
Wow.
And it was exciting. I mean, buying that first one had the normal amount of, I guess, fear or concern. But when I looked at it, I said, "Holy cow, this is unbelievable. All I need to do is just own this thing for 30 years and it's free and clear." And in this case, I bought this was 1968, so it's been a while ago. So you have to ratchet up the numbers, but I bought that first one for just under $20,000, $19,380, as I recall, with $1,000 down, 5% down FHA. And I said, wow, the property pays for itself if I were just renting it out. And all I have to do is own it 30 years and it's free and clear. How many of these would I need to be set? And I just calculated, it took all of 5 seconds to say, well, I think five properties and I'd be set. So that was my goal that I set. And then I went off and had my career and worked on enjoying that, which I did. And that was really it. And that worked. There were a lot of ups and downs in between, so it wasn't straight. It certainly was not some straight line, but that was really it. And it showed it showed that, hey, the power of community is there. The community just happened to be people who were in essence, standing around the proverbial water cooler chatting.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny.
How many properties do you have now?
Oh, we've got about 60 now that are rentals. We've got in Arizona in the valley, in the Phoenix area. We've got a small portfolio, and then here where I am in northern Arizona in Prescott, we've got a few, and then we've got 40 in Indiana. So,
Holy smokes, 60 rental properties. And so obviously that's a lot more than 5. At what point did your mindset shift where I need 60?
well, first off, I never shifted to where I need 60. I, as the big, probably the biggest event in investing for me, uh, aside from just the continuity of just staying with it for year after year after year, was was being there and ready at the right time. I guess I was fortunate in seeing or sensing and reading all of the above that something was going to happen, and that occurred in around 2003. I was in Southern California, and I just looked at it, and it was just the sense that this is not sustainable. The market was just the way the market was behaving. And I was wrapping up my career in high tech. I'd covered Asia Pacific, uh, built into that after probably five five careers, and that was great. Loved it. And then as I was coming to a natural end of that, why I just sensed, say, this market is kind of crazy, uh, and and I then read some things that predicted a depression coming in like 2009, I think they had said. And all their logic for that was wrong, but their timing was pretty good. And I just started preparing uh, for that. And in that process, why I did some scouting around of different areas, 2 or 3 different places in the country, and I made a trip out to Prescott, Arizona, and liked what I saw and started investing here. That was 2004, 5, so it was before things broke. But then in 2009, uh, it was interesting because I was at a ASREA meeting, Arizona Real Estate Association, Investors Association in Phoenix, and uh, there was a guy there who was doing fix and flips in Phoenix, and he described what he was doing, and and I looked at that and I said, "Holy cow!" Uh, by then, I think I was buying uh, pretty much by the financials. So I looked at what cap rate he was buying at, and I said, "Wow, this really answers my needs because I can buy properties at this kind of cap rate," and the cap rates were 8% to 10%. I could put together a portfolio that produces enough income uh, to meet my needs like forever. And so I jumped into that market in 2009, 10, 11. And to your point about how many, I would I bought a few in 2009. I think I bought 6 properties in '09, uh, and then only like 2 a year at 10, 11. Uh, so we had 15 in Phoenix, and at that point, I think I was looking at it saying, "Well, this is enough." But something you're going to discover uh, as you have more little investments called kids is that we had expenses that I could see were going to increase the need. So my original calculation, I kept revising, saying, "Well, a little more property won't hurt anything." So, but there was never there was never a point where I said, "Oh, I want 100 properties," or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, I looked at it more as the process of just saying, "Okay, I can handle this." And I would, after the first few, after the first 6, why, I just, okay, another one, another, it was one at a time, and I kept doing it and saying, "Okay, this is working." And by
Yeah.
that time, I was a licensed realtor. Uh, by 2009, I was really done with that. So, uh, so really, I was just looking for the property to provide the cash flow that we needed, and that was it. So I just gradually kept increasing, and even by 2012, why, prices were moving up in Phoenix, even though they went on after that and doubled and maybe doubled again. Why, uh, I was saying, okay, where can I get now a better cap rate? And through a conversation with another investor, why, I looked at Indiana, and we actually did some cash out refi. I think I still had some capital left, but then we did cash out refi so that all the investment in Phoenix is basically being cashed out, and there's still very good cash flow. So, uh, and it was kind of the same algorithm there. We started off there and bought, we bought 4 and then 2 more, and then each year in Indiana, because the prices were so much lower, they were less than half of Phoenix prices. Why, each year I was picking up a few there, even 5 or 6, and it was just a consistent process: buy it,
Mm,
renovate, uh, lease it up. And I really enjoyed the process of taking a piece of junk and making it into something beautiful.
mm.
And Indiana offered much more of that opportunity because there were a lot of, if you think of Detroit, think of the image of Detroit with boarded up houses. Well, there was a lot of that at that
Yeah.
time in Madison County, Indiana. Uh, and that was enjoyable to say, okay, I'm improving the neighborhood. And that's one thing I'd learned through my high tech days, is always have a sense of kind of a higher purpose, not just I'm doing this to grub up as much money as I can, but how am I serving others? How am I serving the community or whatever?
Right.
So in high tech, why, it might have been bridging the gap between America and Japan. Uh, in real estate, it may have been, uh, through the Great Recession, it was helping rebuild America one family at a time because a lot of people were in need. So that, to me, is really essential. If anyone, most people seem to get into this and be thinking money, and I think you need to make that shift to what value are you providing. Um, that's just, for me, that's essential. It helps keep the ego in check, and that, I found, is my worst enemy. My ego is my worst enemy. So,
Hold on. But before we get into that, I want to take 1 second to tell you about the Get Wealth community. I built a community to go alongside with the podcast so you can get direct access to the people that come on the show. Every single week, we're going to have live Q&As with the guests that come on the show. We're going to have millionaire coffee hours. There's going to be a growing book list of all the book recommendations that the guests that come on the show said that book changed their life or their business. There's going to be like-minded people in there. It's going to be growing. Everybody that comes on the show is going to be in there ready to help you. If you want access, it's free to the first 100 members. The link is in the description. Would love to have you in there. Let's get back to the show. So you were talking about how you needed to have a purpose in your investing, and it's not just about the money. And in 2008, that was building back one family at a time, and then in your high tech, that was bridging the gap between Japan and America. So what has that turned into today? Are you still buying rental properties, and is that still the same motivation behind it?
right now, the last we bought it's been I think it was 2022 in Madison County, Indiana, we really reached the point where we had the cash flow we wanted. So it was more a matter of just having things make sense financially. Like I said, I buy by the financials. And that took me a while to to figure out. And that goes to that point of ego, because I look back at where I've made mistakes in the past. For example, now Eckhart Tolle would say there are no mistakes. There's only decisions made from your present level of awareness, which is okay. That's a nice philosophical thought. But when you put $1 million in the stock market and you lose every penny of it, which I did, and at the end of the 90s when .com collapsed, why, gee, that felt like a mistake. But that wasn't a mistake. It was just the learning experience I needed, because I didn't bring the proper level of awareness to my stock investing. I knew better. I mean, I had an MBA from UCLA at that point. I knew diversification and I knew financial analysis and all that, and yet I still totally messed up. And I went back and analyzed it. Well, what did I do wrong? What happened? And I tracked it back to my own ego and greed. And when I've reflected on what I've done well, there's always been that something that kept the ego in check. And that's why I stress providing value that keeps the ego in check. And when I've done that, why, things have worked great. And if the ego is not in check, why, I could count on big problems happening. So, yeah, that's so when you were asking, so what about keep going and going and going?
Okay.
Well, I met the basic requirement that I had, which was just a certain amount of cash flow. But also when I bought, it's not like I just did it for the for the greater good. It had to also be good business sense. So that's where cap rates came in and internal rates of return and so forth. And I bought in Indiana from 2014 to 2022. By then, the numbers were not working as well. And I would say it was really difficult to be meeting the financial numbers that I have to buy at the cap rate that was my target. So I simply made an adjustment. So I've tried really to follow basic principles that I learned from reading about Warren Buffett, and I would recommend that to anyone. I personally think that philosophy just resonated with me.
Sure.
For someone else, it probably wouldn't, but it certainly did for me, and it really tied in to a sense of value and to a certain balance.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that it was really just, okay, those don't work. And I've been content with that ever since.
All right, last interruption here. We had some technical difficulties with the camera switching up. So just want to take an opportunity here to say, if you're enjoying the show, please hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. It helps with the algorithm a ton. And if you like this free content, we'd love to see you back. So like and subscribe. And if you want to join the Get Wealth community, the link is in the description.
I stopped buying when the deals that were available no longer made good sense to me, and the fact that by then we really had enough. So since then, I've just been focusing on making the business operate well. So there's always things to do. There's always, okay, let's get the management working a little better and so forth.
Sure. So for someone listening to this today that has no experience, doesn't have any real estate, what should they do to go get their first rental property? I imagine the market has changed quite a bit since when you got started versus now when you're looking at a deal. What's maybe step 1 through 5, or what steps should someone take to buy their first rental property today?
Well, I think step one goes way before acquiring the property, and that is something that's an ongoing, and I view it as a job for the rest of my life. Uh, is I have to ask, who am I? What's my motivation? What's my purpose? So they really need to address that first and understand themselves. Um, I know something I've mentioned to you in the past. Kolbe, KOLBE.com, gives a is a gives a profile. They call it cognitive. Things like that have really helped me to understand myself. Uh, so I believe a person needs to understand himself. What's his motivation? If I want to make money, well, then you got to dig deeper. Uh, because everyone wants to make money. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting that down. Yes, you want to make money, but really to understand yourself, that'll help you to decide what works for you. I was lucky. I didn't know any other strategies. Buy and hold is what there was. I had never heard of a subject to. I never heard of I never heard of a wholesaling. Uh, I don't know if there was there was probably fix and flipping going on, but I didn't know any of those. So I was lucky that for me, buy and hold investing matched my engineering background. It matched the fact I was fully employed and I could do it on the side. It matched in a lot of ways, but that's the first step really is to get true to your own purpose, and that's going to shift, by the way. The outer purpose you have is going to shift with time, but start with that uh, and try to, as best you can, feel a sense of what I'd call a higher purpose. So, is it for me in the high tech, bridging the gap between America and Japan, or in the Great Recession, uh, helping rebuild America one family at a time, having something that's a service. So as much as you can tap that also, and you don't have to have that to start. You could just go out and start looking. But that's really the next step, I would say, is take action. And I would say in general, uh, there's a book, and I don't know if that's the one I read, but Tiny Habits. Uh, Develop a habit. Take action every single day, a little action. And that's true with whatever you want to accomplish. Break it down into tiny, achievable steps that you do. That's a, that's essential. So that's what I would say is set your action plan. What is that? Well, it's going to vary for each person. One person, it may be going and taking a course, Principles in Real Estate at junior college. I did that. I took a course in legal aspects. But I didn't say, well, I got to do all those first. No, I jumped in and bought a property and did that. I did it basically all at the same time. So I would say that's really key. Just get out and look at properties. Go online and start analyzing properties. And as you go, I would say building your financial expertise is essential. Real estate's very simple, but there's a million simple pieces. So it's, it's so easy. It's so easy. It's like falling off a log. Yeah, you can become a millionaire in real estate. Oh, it's so easy. Yeah, well, it's easy if you do the next million things. So, you just chop away at them one at a time.
Yeah.
And that's the key is to be taking action. I've seen people who enroll in one course and another, and they go with some guru. And I know someone who spent, I think, $150,000 on all these programs.
Holy smokes.
Said, how was that? And she said, oh, it was great. Each of them is great. And I said, well, what property did you buy? Oh, no, I don't have any money for any property. I said, "You would have been better off to get on a plane and go to Indianapolis and just buy a piece of junk. That'll be your education, and it'll be cheaper than what you just did." So, that's essential, and that balance of doing but not overdoing, I mean, there's gotta be some sanity to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Okay. Yeah, I think education is you can't even get out your front door if you don't know the first thing about what you're doing. So I think there's definitely a groundwork you have to lay there. As far as opportunities in the real estate market right now, what do you say is the best opportunity that maybe people aren't seeing or that's available right now with current interest rates or and getting invested today?
yeah, good question, because we are obviously at a very different place than we were in the Great Recession. Uh, it's not that different than we've been at certain times. I mean, I can think of how was it in 1968? Uh, and, I could probably, if I think about it, I could think of times that were not that much different than right now. The bottom line, and this really gets to that issue of a level of financial training, is at any time, no matter the circumstances, the investor has to be able to assess the market, assess his own skills and the opportunities, the capital he's got available, or the partners he has available to provide capital, and come up with a solution. You are an entrepreneur. If you're a real estate investor, you're an entrepreneur. Well, an entrepreneur takes an asset and improves the value of it. So how do you do that? So that's really up to you, and it's one of the essential skills is that mindset of where can I see value? So it's easy right now to say, wow, these deals don't work. I mean, I just said it myself. I said I stopped buying because with the way I was doing it, it wasn't working with those numbers. But as you actually know, there was a way. And so my answer is what you found, which is okay, go find the person who needs to move. Some people need to move because they're getting a family situation changed. They're getting divorced. There was death in the family. There was something. There was a job change. And they want to get out of what they're in.
Yeah.
And the benefit you may offer is taking over their property very, very quickly. And so you may be acquiring property subject to. That I would say is definitely right now. If I'm starting now, I would be saying, how can I find those? Because they're not easy to find. Anyone says, oh, just do subject to. Yeah. Okay. Well, where is it? Go find. Uh, you probably made 1,000 phone calls to find the one you found in
Or at
Cotton.
least.
It's a challenge. Um, but if you're out there in the game, why then those kind of opportunities come up. So I would say be out in the game and develop the skills of speaking with people. And this is where the higher value comes through is go in with an approach of I want to help you
Yeah.
instead of I want to grub up some money because I want to take advantage of your situation. No, how can I help you? And just do that. And
Yeah.
and helping them may be referring them to some realtor. It may be showing them they don't need to sell, but just provide value, and I guarantee something's gonna show up. Just keep providing value. Now, obviously, to be able to do that, the thing that people run into, "Well, wait a minute, I gotta have money for food." Well, you gotta solve that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think that that can push you the wrong way, uh, if you've not solved that. You've gotta solve that, and that's
Right.
one reason I like, people talk down a job. "Oh, a job is like it's a dirty, horrible thing." My view was I want a job I enjoy, and it took me years to get to where I enjoyed my job, but that was a great combination to have a job you enjoy and invest on the side
Hmm.
is a surefire way to build financial independence. It's not the
Yeah.
only way. A lot of people do it a different way, but that was my way, and it was great. So,
Well, so let's break down that deal, actually, the Cottonwood one, because I think that's a good example of how you can provide value. I mean, that was a very unique scenario where he had this very specific plan, and the deal was not going to work any other way except for pretty much the terms that we came up with. So, how did you provide value in that scenario?
the very first thing, and kudo to you for, you should probably answer, how in the heck did you find the guy? I think you just called, made
That one was a
thousands
cold
of
call
phone calls.
on. It was a for sale by owner on Zillow, actually. So,
Okay.
but then he pulled it off, and I had followed up with him for like a year. So that was, yeah,
So there's all kinds of lessons there, right? All
yeah.
kinds of lessons right there. Perseverance, follow up. Uh, so and you asked, what would I do? So there you've answered that question. Okay. Uh, do check on FSBOs. Now, I would say this, be aware of the environment that's going on, because that'll show you where things are shifting. Right now, we're, uh, give you my official prediction. I think within 1 year we'll be in a recession if we're not actually already. There's going to
Wow.
be opportunities show up. People are going to get in trouble. A lot of the people uh, maybe paid at top of market when interest rates were down at negative real rates. The real rate is the nominal rate minus the rate of inflation. Uh, those folks who paid too much, if they lose a job, if they have a family situation, they need to move, whatever, the opportunity to be there and say, hey, I'll take over your payments. This is going to help you because I'll keep your payments paid. You won't take a hit on your credit. You'll be able to buy again. Uh, and there's a lot of detail that needs to go into that. But that that's a situation. So be aware of where we are and and tracking that. And you could track pre-foreclosures. You could do direct mail. I like direct mail. I always tried to get you to do that instead of all
Cold
those
calling.
horrible phone calls, because I get real nasty with people who call. I'm not a good person. I'm mean. But be as a way. So all right, so let's go back to Cottonwood. So you reached them, you had conversation with him, and you're saying that it was over a year period,
It might not
and
have been a year, but it was a while. It was definitely some follow up.
and that's a common story, by the way. I've heard many stories of people who are doing this, and if you're really doing the job right, a lot of times it really takes knowing the person, understanding their situation. So what I encourage people to do, is get to know them. Hey, this guy wanted to leave the U.S. and go to the Philippines. He wanted a less expensive lifestyle, still living well, but living on a vastly reduced amount of money. And so for whatever reason, he chose the Philippines. And, so, uh, I spoke with you about it, and I said, well, let's get in and talk to him. So we went in and we sat down with him, and I took my wife along with us because she's Filipina. So I thought, well, this'll help. Um, so, in chatting with him, why, number one, the numbers didn't work. I mean, he wanted this
Top
price.
dollar.
He wanted a
Yeah.
price that was probably $20,000 to $30,000 more than the property realistically was worth.
Right.
And and interestingly, today that's still true. By the way, uh, I'll get to that, but the property cash flows and does fine, but
That's awesome.
it's not, the market hasn't taken off like crazy to where it was the gold mine that I would have liked, but it
Mm.
doesn't matter. The numbers work. So basically what we did is we said, well, what do you need? Well, he was stuck on may as well talk numbers, right? Uh, he was stuck on, as I recall, stuck on a price of it was 310 or 320. And basically, at that time, I don't think we had determined it was even going to be a subject to. But along the way, we looked at it and we said, well, The thing that could make it work is the fact that he's got this very low interest rate loan. It was like 2.375, as I recall. It was uh, and we asked him, "Hey, are you willing to let us take over that loan? We just take it subject to. Is that okay?" And surprising to me, he knew what that meant. Most people, if you said, "Could I take it subject to?" they wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Oh, really? I didn't realize he was familiar with it. Okay.
Yeah, he had actually, I think, had a discussion with someone. So he was familiar with what that meant. And he knew that if we took it subject to, because that was a VA loan, he would not be able to go get another VA loan. So we were able to be upfront with him about the trade-off here is, hey, look, if you do this, you can't go out and just decide I want another house. You can't get it until we pay off that loan. And we don't know when that's going to be. And he was totally fine with that because he was moving to the Philippines. So, and that's another word of advice. Be totally honest with people. Don't be slippery. I'm going to take an aside. I do get so many calls from wholesalers, and I'll ask them what their business model is. Are you a wholesaler? They won't say yes. Just say yes if you're a wholesaler. Yes, I do wholesale some deals. I also, I may keep some. But when I talk to someone, if they're slippery that way, I'm done with them.
Right. Especially because it's not like they're not pulling anything by you, and they don't know that you know. So you can kind of see behind the
They
screen.
don't. So they think they have to be slippery, and they think, well, if I tell the truth, no one will want to deal with me. That's bogus. If the truth doesn't work, you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, you may need to learn to craft a message and explain why you offer value. In fact, I think if you're wholesaling, you should have that message. Hey, look, I help with the liquidity of the market, which a wholesaler does. That's the truth. That's the value. The value of the wholesaler is they provide liquidity. They're dealing with people and property that seller doesn't realize they can sell. Well, I can't sell it. It's got a hole in the roof, and the rain comes in, and the place needs to be gutted, and a wholesaler can deal with that. A fix and flipper can deal with that. But a realtor who's putting it on MLS typically will not deal with that. So there's a real value there, and that's part of whatever you're doing is being able to convey the value that you offer.
Yeah.
So back to the question you raised. So here we are, we're talking with this guy, Danny, and okay, Danny, well, what do you need? Now, that's a key question to ask. Instead of what can I get out of you, instead of how can I rip you off, instead of how can I make the most profit, what do you need? So it was really in that discussion when we sat down with him at that point that we were able to find how can we make a conclusion or put together a package that meets your needs and mine when it looks like it doesn't. You want more than this property is worth. So how can that work? And so, well, what I want, he was able to clarify. A lot of people can't, by the way. You may have to help them. Well, what do you really need? What they really need may not be what they think they need. They may think they need, I've got to sell this house. Well, maybe they don't have to sell this house. Maybe what they need is $500 a month, and maybe there's another way. But in his case, well, what I want is I want to be able to go to the Philippines. I want to be out from under this obligation of this house. And he had monkeyed with the house, if you recall. There was an interesting music room music room is another word for a piece of junk. I mean, it really messed up. So they were special, and the flooring was all through the house was kind of messed up. So there were challenges, but what did he need? Well, he wanted to get up and move. Okay, so he wanted to be out from this loan, but he also had certain obligations, so he needed $100K. All right. Is there a way to get him $100K and to buy at this price? And he was stuck on that price. That I'm not sure. I don't know if we ever knew. Was that just, some people are just stuck on a certain thing. They believe a certain thing, and that's it. And if you can deal with that, that's fine. So that was the interesting point. When we got to that point, I said, well, if I could sort that out, fine. So what I looked at, I said, well, if I had a source for that 100K that he needs, then there's a way to do it. So luckily I had been working with someone for 4 or 5 years, and he was a source of capital, and I simply worked out a deal with him then where, okay, if you come in with this, we'll structure it this way. So we structured the sale where it would be his and my LLC that was already existing, and you'll loan to the LLC this actually 123K, so it's enough to do the renovation too. You'll do that, and we'll pay 5% out to you, and you're in on the deal. You're in on the upside that way. You're not making a great interest rate, but you're getting something. You're getting 5% plus 50% on any upside. Does that work for you? Now, he might have just said no. Then I would have been back to square one.
Yeah.
But luckily, he said yes, he would do that. And that's another little lesson is build relationships as you go, because that's really essential in general, whether you're sharing information or sharing money or sharing resources, sharing talent. That's a key part of it. So we put that together subject to his existing loan, and there's the capital source. And I structured it. It's the first one I ever structured that way, because I wasn't big on no money down. I had, through my other investments, I had the capital, so I didn't need to do that. Well, this one I didn't have, so it was nice if someone else did. So the money partner came in, and he wanted to be a passive investor, so I handle the property management. That was part of my value, and putting the thing together. So that was really it. But so how did we handle the fact the price was too high? Well, that was,
Right.
again, I remember we had multiple discussions about that. I said, well, we finally got to the point where this was like 20K difference. And that 20K really made the difference. And oftentimes you run into that, and that's the end of the deal. But what we did is we said, you know what? We'll give him his price, but that 20K he's carrying for 5 years, 0% interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did we pay him his 20K? No, we still owe it to him. We've been in it now 2 years, I think. So at some point we got to pay him his 20K, but I could make the deal work. And I said, you know what, we're basically getting a call option on the future value, and we'll hope that at some point values go up. So that shows, as long as you recognize the risks involved, why there you go. If we got out today and sold it, we wouldn't come out with a huge profit. We're actually coming out fine in terms of cash flow right now, but there wouldn't be a big upside. So sometimes you make these projections and you say, where am I investing and where am I speculating? So I would say in this case, and I try to be an investor, not a speculator.
Right.
A lot of people are pure speculators and they don't realize it. So that's something a
Yeah.
person needs to do is, where am I really being an investor? Listen to Warren Buffett on that subject. He's got some great discussions on that. A lot of what goes on in America is speculation, and people say I'm an investor. They're not being an investor, but at any rate, there was that speculative component to it. But the thing cash flows. So,
Yeah.
uh, and in fact, I structured it so I had $0 in, but then when I handled the improvements, we made more improvements than projected. So I ended up with maybe $5,000 in the deal.
Mhm.
Uh, but my cash flow is equal to that much each year. So uh, no big no big problem. But the bottom line was it came from really having a chat with this owner and understanding here's what your need is, here's what you want, here's where we're stuck, how can we structure it? And then, you know, the bottom line thing that tipped it over was exactly that loan. He carried a second trust deed at 0% interest for 5 years. So he gets his price, at least mentally,
You're right. In some way,
but
that's what
he
the
gets
second
his
price was.
price, but it's in 5 years. So if you really look at it realistically, first thing you do is oh, excuse me.
That's it.
First thing you do is you'd say what's the present value of that $5,000 5 years from now. So if you took it in real dollars, why I mean that 20,000 is I don't know what that would be, but I discount that at uh, for those 5 years and say that 20,000 is really the equivalent of whatever it is, 12,000 or something.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Yeah, that's a complex deal. Someone listening right now that hasn't bought their first rental might be a little bit overwhelmed by that, but that's an example of kind of what you work up to when you've been doing the business for 40 years. You know all the different strategies. So at the end of the day, pick a strategy, like you were saying, take small steps to work towards that goal, and eventually opportunities come up, and then when you're in the right place, you can provide value. And this guy's living happily in the Philippines now, and that deal couldn't have came together if you didn't have that skill set. So that's an example of how you can really provide value. One more thing I wanted to get into before we kind of wrap this up and head over to the Q&A section is the self-directed IRA. I remember you
right.
were telling me you've been able to utilize that in buying real estate. And I don't know, I know when you told me about it, I had no idea that was an option. So just in, maybe 5 minutes or so, how can someone use a self-directed IRA? What is that? How can you buy real estate with it?
Yeah. What I would suggest first is, and I would say not just a self-directed IRA, I would even define it as a Roth IRA.
Mhm.
Basically, um, and by the way, I didn't know about Roth IRAs either until 2010, and I was in one coaching program, and it said, if you don't have a Roth IRA, you're really making a mistake. And I go, wow. And I went and did a IRA to Roth conversion and paid the income tax on doing that. So basically, with a Roth IRA, you put in after-tax money. So you got to pay the tax on that money. You don't get the deduction like you do dropping money into an IRA. And you can I would go on with, pick the company you want to deal with and go on and read their information. Uh, there's books on IRAs, so it's a good case of doing your homework. But basically, you're putting in after-tax money, and then the money can grow tax-free forever. So if you put in I'll just make up some numbers. Let's say you had an IRA that with $100,000 in it. If you rolled that into a Roth IRA, you're going to pay tax on that 100K. So maybe you'll do it over 2 or 3 years, but then that money can grow tax free. Well, what could you do with 100K? Today, maybe you're kind of limited, but I'll just make up numbers. I actually rolled money in, and I had it in there for a year before I looked, and this was during the Great Recession. I actually saw a house I could buy for $53,000 plus renovation, for 52 plus renovation was 63,000. I had already set up a self-directed IRA LLC, so you can Google it. You should talk to companies and get the details on that. And I simply bought it the same as any other house. I bought it into my LLC and I paid cash. And I ended up, through doing that, over a few years, I rented it out. I had all that cash flow that accumulated tax-free, and then I ended up selling it for, let's just say 180. Let's say I was in at 60 and I sold it for 180. Boom, tripled there. Plus I had made 10% a year for several years. So I did that numerous times and ended up doing a 10x of the money I had put in. Now that
So
can be
you
awesome.
you rolled over money into your Roth IRA, and then so from my understanding, when I go in there, it's like you can search a equity and you can buy stocks, and that's how it grows interest free. How are you buying real estate with that? Are you just like wiring funds to escrow from your
Yeah, if you're
brokerage?
doing if you're doing stocks, you go to Fidelity National or Schwab or whatever.
Yeah.
This is different in that there are specialized companies, at least now. There's now companies that'll do both, but uh, in general, it's one or the other. If you're
Oh,
doing
I
with
see.
Schwab, you're dealing with stocks.
I
You
see.
don't go to Schwab and buy real estate.
Okay. I didn't know
Okay, they
actually if
don't
that was
they don't do
possible.
that. Okay, maybe someday they will. Uh, so you go to a company that's structured for that. So that's one of the things you do. So
Yeah.
that's who I went to dump the money in.
Yeah.
And in this case, I set up what's called it's a self-directed IRA, meaning that you're making the decisions, not made by some retirement fund somewhere. So it's self-directed. And what I did is called a checkbook control IRA. Checkbook control referring to the fact that you set up an LLC that's funded by that IRA
Yeah.
and has checks. You set up a checking account for that LLC, and called a checkbook control IRA. At that point, it's an LLC. Is no different than any other LLC you've got.
Hmm.
There are very strict rules, though, you need to be aware of.
Yeah.
You can't do prohibited transactions. You can't go and mow the lawn. You can't go and pick up a hammer and start bashing holes in the walls. You can't do those. Those are all prohibited transactions. So you've got to learn uh, those restrictions. If you violate those, it'll blow up the whole thing, and it will not be pretty. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you're cool with that. To me, it's just a matter of knowing what you can do and what you can't do, and then it works. Then it works fine. But it's the power of the checkbook control IRA is the fact that you buy just like in any other LLC, and
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think that's a really strong lever that somebody can use if they got a bunch of money sitting in their 401k and they're not getting great returns and they like real estate. That's an option for you. Make sure you go and look at all the details, like you're saying. Don't just dive in without doing some basic research. But yeah, I thought that was really cool when you told me you were doing that to buy real estate. Most people probably haven't heard of that. But all right, that about wraps up our episode of the Get Wealth podcast here. We are going to continue the conversation in the Get Wealth community. So if you want access to live Q&A with Alan Woodruff, how to buy real estate, whatever you want to ask, maybe it's just a, personal life finance question, whatever it is, go on over there. We'll put the link in the description. And thanks for watching.